Today we're going to be taking a look at two different Ride1up e-bikes with the 700 series and the Turris, which represent a mid-tier and entry-level model from Ride1up. We're going to be putting them head-to-head to help you decide which one is better for you.
Welcome back to Electric Bike Report. I'm Justin, this is Griffin, and today we're going to be comparing the Ride1up Turris versus the 700 series. Now, these bikes are both really all-around bikes that appeal to a lot of different people, and I'd say they're probably two of their most popular, if not their most popular bikes that they sell. So, the Turris starts right around $1,300. That's the MSRP. So it's a very entry-level priced bike, but has a lot of really good specs as you see as we go through this. It is what we would consider a touring / trekking bike. It's class 3, which means you have throttle up to 20 miles per hour and then pedal assist to 28. It has a 750 watt rear hub motor from Shengi that provides you with 60 Newton meters of torque. The battery is a 48 volt, 12.8 amp hour, which gives you 640 total watt hours of capacity. It does have a cadence sensor with 5 different assist levels. It comes with Shimano Tourney 7-speed over-the-bar shifters and a 12 to 32 tooth cassette, 46 tooth front chainring. It has Zoom hydraulic brakes, which are 2-piston with 180 millimeter rotors. It comes with a 100 millimeter front fork that does have a lockout. The tires are Kenda tires. They're 27.5 by 2.4 inches and a black and white display. It's also a little bit on the lightweight side actually. It's only 58.7 pounds. Without the battery, it's 51 pounds and feels pretty light as well. Total payload capacity, so how much total weight you can put on the bike, is 300 pounds. And then just a few of the other extras. It does come with fenders, a 60 lux headlight, and a throttle.
Yeah. And then as we kind of jump over and take a look at things on the 700 side, you're gonna notice right off the bat, the MSRP on that is just around $1,700. So $400 more than the Turris, but you do see a step up in a lot of different ways with the spec package on the 700. So starting things off, this one is a slightly different style. It's more of a commuter touring style. It is also a class 3 e-bike, so throttle to 20 and PAS up to 28 miles per hour. It has a different motor. It's a 750 watt hub motor, but this one is by Bafang with 60 Newton meters of torque there as well. It's got a slightly larger battery with a 48 volt, 15 amp hour or 720 watt hour battery. It also uses a cadence sensor with PAS levels 1 through 5. And then the drivetrain is a Shimano Acera 8-speed. It's got rapid fire triggers with trigger shifters with an 11 to 30 tooth cassette on a 45 tooth chainring. The brakes are the Tektro HD E350 hydraulic disc brakes, 2 pistons with 180 millimeter rotors there. And then you also get a 100 millimeter fork. It's the Mozo fork, spring fork on that. The tires are the WTB Groove E 27.5 by 2.4 inch tires. And this one has a color LCD display. This one is a little bit heavier, comes in at just under 66 pounds. But also has a 300 pound payload capacity and comes with a bunch of goodies such as the fenders, headlight, tail light, and a rear rack capable of carrying 50 pounds. So there's kind of like the basic differences in spec that you see. Like I mentioned, you see a slight step up on the Ride1up 700. But now we want to kind of take you through and focus on some of the most notable spec differences and how it kind of equates to how these two different bikes ride. Let's kind of back things up and talk about the motor. So they're both 750 watt motors, but one by Shengi and one by Bafang. In general, we think Bafang, like the Bafang motor just has a little bit more oomph, a little bit more acceleration to it, I'd say. While the Shengi one is still actually a very good entry-level motor that I think we like a lot.
Yeah, I would say that both motors are kind of better than what you would expect given the price range. That's kind of what Ride1up is known for. And so even though as you go through all the specs and you compare them side by side, the 700 series is a step up from the Turris. I would just want to make sure that everybody realizes that both of them are usually a little more bang for your buck when it comes to Ride1up. You see that in the motor. For me, when I look at the two bikes, one of the main differences is actually if you look at the tires. You know, going from those Kenda tires, you see they're a lot more knobby on the Turris, whereas the Ride1up are more kind of like a city touring with those WTB groove tires. So both really good tires, but does go, like, I really like how both of these bikes are both all around, but I would say the Turris does a little better off-road because of those knobbies, whereas the 700 series, a little more comfortable around town.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely. And then finally, we kind of like touched on it before, but the weight difference here is something you can feel. The Turris just feels a little bit lighter, a little bit more nimble and springy kind of out there on the roads. Whereas on the Ride1up 700, it's not like heavy by comparison, like it's heavier, but it's kind of hard to describe. It just feels a little bit more planted, like on the roads, a little bit more.
Yeah, I would say it might even, the word that I would use is actually a little more solid.
Yeah.
Like when I take it, we'll call it the curb test. If I ride off a curb, the 700 series just does feel very solid and good off that test. And part of that, I think, is the weight. So it's not like the weight is a bad thing, but it is kind of nice that the Turris is a little bit lighter and it just feels a little more nimble on that.
Definitely. So those are some of the major things that we focused on, and obviously there's a lot of good spec there. But let's talk more specifically about how all that spec adds up to the ride as we put these things head to head in our testing. Now we're going to take a look and see how both of these bikes can help you out on a hill. Our test hill here at EBR is the infamous Hellhole Trail. It's a 1/3 of a mile long with a 12% average grade. Let's take you there now to see how both bikes performed.
All right, we're here on the Ride1up Turris, the throttle test, and we'll see out of the gate. It felt pretty fast hitting into this hill. We'll see how it does on the hill. Down to about 10 miles an hour, 9, and a 7, 6. Kind of holding the high 5/8s. Usually if they make it through that section, it makes it, but there's a segment right up here that'll be kind of the final test on this one. Again, I'm not putting any input other than the throttle here. So not really a real life test, but a great test of that motor, see how powerful it is, how much torque it has. So I'm gonna let you listen to that motor as I go on through this last punchy section, see if it makes it up. So you can kind of hear I'm not moving very fast, so the motor gets nice and quiet. As I get picking up speed here, the motor will get a little bit louder. It's kind of what I would expect out of an e-bike. So yeah, unless something weird happens, this is going to make it up the hill. My guess is going to be right at average or right below average in terms of speed up the hill on the throttle. I'll have to go to the numbers and check the tape. But yes, you can throttle up something as steep and as nasty as Hellhole on the Turris. All right, so here we are on the Ride1up 700 series step through, which is a 750 watt rear hub motor, listed at 60 Newton meters of torque. And we'll see how it does. Right now it's showing that it's putting out just under 900 watts of power, going about 9.8 miles per hour through this super steep section, 7 miles per hour, down to 6. But definitely feels like it's going to make it up this hill. Not blazing fast speed, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So as I go through this next section, listen to the motor, you'll kind of see how the sound that it makes as it goes through this next kind of punchy steep climb section, and then after. So I'll stop talking so you can hear that. So yeah, as you can hear kind of through the steeper section, it's like a low grunt. You can kind of hear from the motor. Then as you pick up speed, you hear a little bit more of that whine. But I would wager that it's a little bit on the less noisy side of rear hub motors. And so from a throttle standpoint, yeah, I mean, I think this shows that if you just want to relax, sit back and let the motor do it, it'll do it for you. Interested to see the results on the 700 series step through. Okay, on the Ride1up Turris, on the pedal test, assist level 5. So see how it does so far. Pulling right about 10 miles per hour. Not having to push very hard. Say maybe a teeny bit harder than some of the other rear hub motors, but nothing like a mid-drive. It's right around 7 miles per hour through that first steep section. I'm in second gear. As we go up here, I'll probably want to shift back to up to third. Right down to right about 9 miles per hour. Let you listen to the motor through this next section. Yeah, the motor, again, kind of like on the throttle. You can hear it, not too bad. I'll say for like the price you pay for the Turris, I think this performance, no matter what it ends up being, it overperforms its price. Definitely able to climb hellhole, not very hard, not sweating. It's not a rocket ship, but it gives me more than enough assist to get up to the top. And we'll see what the results say. Okay, now we're on the Ride1up 700 series pedal test. We're gonna see how that 750 watt rear hub motor goes. And peaking looks like just around 900 watts of power through this section. About 12 miles an hour, 11, and about 10. I will say I'm not having to push hardly at all. I can push more if I want, but I'm trying not to, so it's really not bad. So we got down just high 9s right there in this next section. Again, I'll let you listen to the motor so you can see kind of how that sounds. Yeah, kind of about the same sound it had when I was on throttle only. I will say that it shifts really nicely. Something that we see with a lot of rear hub motors. A little easier to shift on hills than mid drives, but it is very smooth shifting. Motor has really nice engagement and feels powerful, not overpowered, but definitely very nice and smooth climbing up a hill.
All right, so you've kind of watched as I've taken both bikes up the hill. There's a couple things that really stood out to us as we tested it both up hellhole and then the additional testing that we've done. You'll see in the results on throttle, both bikes were fairly similar. It took 1 minute 48 seconds for the 700 series and 1 minute 50 seconds for the Turris. So basically right about the same. On the pedal though, that's where you start to see the difference, where it was 1 minute 21 for the 700 series and 1 minute 30 for the Turris. And what we've seen, and we see this actually when we're pedaling around flats as well, is on throttle, both the Turris and the 700 series give you kind of full wattage there. And so they're both, 750 watt, 60 Newton meters of torque rear hub motors. Slightly more powerful on the 700 series, I would say, even on flats. But really where the difference comes in is on the pedal. And we saw that in the hill test here, where you have a 9-second difference. And I would attribute that pretty much 100% to the difference in the motor, the Bafang versus the Shengi. That's what I would say that I felt climbing hills. I don't know if I think you've had the similar experience.
Yeah, I'd say it's been the same for me as well. You just get a little bit more oomph out of it, but like, you know, in either way, the one thing we always remind people to focus on with the hill test is they can both get up. And I think that's kind of like the big win here. I mean, it's a very nasty hill that people don't want to pedal up on a traditional bike. But you do get just a slight speed edge with the 700 if you are worried about racing someone up a hill. But in either case, both are good performers.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So another crucial consideration when you're looking at two different e-bikes is what kind of range is it going to give me? So with both the Turris and the 700, we put them through a different series of range tests where we tested the bikes out at their minimum assistance setting and their maximum assistance setting to help determine the bookend values of range that you can expect. Now, it was kind of some interesting results because on the Turris, we saw a range between 20.45 miles up to 51.5 miles. And then on the 700 series, we had 25.18 miles up to just about 45 miles on the lowest setting. Now what's really interesting to me here is when you're running things at full power, you're getting a little bit more mileage out of the 700. And then when you're running things on conservative power, you're getting more out of the Turris, which kind of like feels right for these bikes. So with the 700 in particular, that range, that 25 to 45 miles, it's actually very fast. You're going to cover that distance in a very fast amount of time. So if you're the type of person who you need a good amount of range, but you need to get where you're going quickly, the 700 is probably a good one for that. But interestingly enough, the Turris is the one that has the best overall range. And considering it's the smaller battery, that kind of surprised me a little bit. But it's just kind of with how it's been programmed, a little bit more conservative on that low setting, and you can help stretch your mileage a little bit further, going about 6 miles more when you're riding things in slow. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of summarize that, the Turris had the better overall range, and then the 700 series was like the faster range, right? Yeah. Which actually leads us to our next section, which is the speed test. And this is the test where we go out and we try to identify how fast the bikes can go in each different PAS level. So we're gonna send you out to the speed test that we did both on the 700 series and the Turris.
All right, so I'm riding around on the Ride1up Turris, gonna do the speed test, see what kind of speeds you can achieve when riding around. So without any motor help, I'm going at about 10.2, 10.3 miles per hour here at a very casual soft pedal. Let's go ahead and put that motor on to PAS1, see what happens. And not much. I think I heard a little slight hum in the motor, but I'm only up to 11.2 miles per hour. I'm not sure it's giving me a whole lot of juice there. Let's go ahead and kick it up to PAS2. Same thing, slightly louder hum maybe, but not a whole lot of speed increase, going about 12.5 miles per hour. Let's kick that up into PAS3. This one feels a little bit better, a little bit more noticeable, able to move into fourth gear here. It's kind of slowly pushing me along, upwards of about still kind of slowly climbing, about 15.8, 15.9 miles per hour. Moving into PAS4 and getting some, oh yeah, that's actually taking quite a bit of the edge off now. Easier to move up through the gears. Still keeping my soft pedal, trying to find out what the motor can do more so than what I can do. And just kind of keeps pushing along up to 20.3 miles per hour. Let's put it in PAS5. It's humming now. Up to 21 miles per hour. Gonna slow down a little bit into this turn. And then really let it move. So yeah, the motor's got a decent hum to it. And the acceleration is kind of in the middle of gradual and fast. But I mean, it kind of picks up here. I'm still not really moving my legs a little bit faster to try to keep the chain, keep up with the speed of the motor, but I'm not pushing any harder. I'm up to about 24.5 miles per hour. So yeah, overall, got some decent speeds on this bike. The motor can produce quite a bit. Yeah, overall, good test. All right, so here's the speed test for the Ride1up 700 ST. Right now I'm pedaling around in fifth gear, going about 11.4 miles per hour. Let's see what happens when we kick that motor on. All right, so we got the motor on and it's working. I appreciate the Ride1up. It has a power meter here, so it's actually telling me how many watts it was spitting out. pushed me about, you know, bouncing between anywhere from 17 to 70, helping me go just a little bit faster, up to 12.9 miles per hour. See what happens when we go to PAS2. It starts kicking in a little bit. You have to move the pedals a few times until it gives you more wattage, it looks like. Now it's up to 140 watts. It's a good bit of assist too. It's got me going about 15.3, 15.4 miles per hour. Actually just kind of steadily climbing. It's still holding that wattage of that 157, so it's kind of helping push me along. Change the gear, see if that helps. Yeah, up to about 15.8 miles per hour. Taking the PAS3. Jumps the wattage up significantly, up to 364 watts. Making it much easier to pedal. Go ahead and change gears. We're in 7th gear now. About 19.5 miles per hour. Seems to be the limit right here. Change that to PAS4. It's dishing out a lot more power, up to 580 watts. Able to move into the 8th and final gear. And it's making pretty light work, going up to 24.2 miles per hour. Yeah, pretty easily. This is right around where I'm starting to feel some ghost pedaling on that drivetrain. Slow down a little bit on this corner. And then we're now in PAS5. Let's see how it goes. And yeah, plenty of motor power. It's making really light work of this. Able to go pretty quickly here, upwards of 26 miles per hour. Gotta slow down a little bit as we pass the runner. On your left. And pick right back up where we left off. Like I said, past 24, 25 miles per hour. It's pretty ghost pedally, moving my legs fast just to try to keep up. But it's gonna top off at about 28.1 miles per hour. So can definitely hit those class 3 speeds. All right, so let's recap the data that we collected on the speed test for both of these bikes. Starting things off with the Turris, so we saw in no pedal assist, 10.3 mile per hour average speeds, going to 11.4 in PAS1, up to 12.5 in PAS2, 15.9 in PAS3, 20.3 miles per hour in PAS4, and capping things off at 24.8 miles per hour in pedal assist 5. Over on the 700, we had 11.2 miles per hour without any motor help, up to 12.9 in PAS1, 15.8 in PAS2, 19.5 in PAS3, 24.4 in PAS4, and rounding things out at 28.1 miles per hour in PAS5. So while you can kind of like see the data there, and you'll be able to kind of like see the kind of obvious difference of the Ride1up 700 being a little bit faster, I think it's worth just kind of talking just in general about how all that speed translates and feels on the road. For me, kind of with both bikes, I found PAS1 and 2 is not something I used a lot of. It was just kind of something that like, it might be nice for, you know, if you're like going out riding as a family, just something a little bit slower, a little bit more tame, or with the Turris, which is a little bit more off-road friendly, like if you don't want a lot of speed, maybe that's when you're riding PAS1 and 2. But for me, I think most people are gonna be riding things in those PAS3, 4, and 5 settings. And then if you're looking at the 700, just know that it can effortlessly get up to 28 miles per hour. The Turris is capable as well. You got to pedal a little bit harder, but on the 700, you can just soft pedal and that thing will take off.
Yeah, it is really fast. And that would be my experience as well, where the 700 series almost kind of shocks you with how fast it is. You don't have to push that hard. I mean, it's still a good, natural, kind of like confident feeling to it, but it's just fast, and you see those in the numbers. The thing that I would want to highlight on the Turris though, is a lot of times in the entry-level bikes, you know, $1,000 to $1,400-ish dollars, you don't really see a well dialed in precise motor, right? When you look at PS1 and 2, sometimes those motors will just give nothing, and then you kick up to like 15 to 16 miles per hour in PS3, and then 4 is about the same as 3, and then 5 jumps you back up. I really did appreciate how on the Turris that difference in speed as you go from PS1, 2, 3, 4, 5 was fairly consistent and smooth. And I would say just a little better than what I normally see for a bike in that price range. So I want to make sure that we're giving the kudos to the Turris where it's due there as well.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're on to the brake test, where we really are trying to test the quality of the brakes on each bike that we get in. And we do that by riding the bikes up to 20 miles per hour and then braking, and we measure the distance it takes to stop. We do this 3 times and then take the average. So with the results, I'm going to pass this back to Griffin, given that Griffin is the one that does every one of our brake tests.
Yep, and for both of these bikes, I mean, they have similar brake systems, the 2-piston hydraulic brakes with 180 millimeter rotors, and it produced almost identical results, oddly enough. We saw a 23 feet stopping distance on the 700 and 23 feet 3 inches on the Turris. I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with how they stopped on both bikes. They're similar brake sets. I think we've kind of learned over time that we like Tektro just a little bit more. They seem to last a little bit longer before you have to get them serviced. So that's maybe a slight leg up for the 700 there. But in terms of just performance and how they feel stopping, I mean, both do a great job of, you know, functioning how you'd kind of expect from brakes. So.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. You know, the Turris took 3 inches longer to stop is all, so that's within that margin of error. Yeah. It is a lighter bike, and so I think it, you know, again, as you mentioned, our results on the Tektro have been a little better than the Zoom that the Turris has, but they're very similar, very close. But yeah, I would say the edge goes to the Tektro a little bit there, but both are going to do a good job as long as you maintain them properly. Okay, now we get to the fun part, where we're gonna go through 6 different categories and award a winner to each category. Now, as we do this, we are gonna kind of make the argument for each bike, so you can then decide if you agree with us or have a different opinion. The first category we're going to go through is the specs.
Yep, and I'll start things off by making the case for the 700 here. The spec is definitely where you see that price difference, that $400 difference of MSRP to me. You are either seeing something bigger or just a brand name that people gravitate towards just a little bit more. I mean, like with the brakes, Tektros over Zoom. You get on the drivetrain there, it's the Shimano Acera with the 8-speed, larger gear range than on what you can find on the Turris. Larger battery, the Fang motor over Shangy. Not that anything on the Turris is bad per se, but I think you're just kind of seeing, like, again, brands that a little bit more commonly found, a little bit more people going for, and they're just slightly better.
Yeah, and I would agree. I'd also say you forgot that the 700 series comes with a rack and the Turris doesn't. But making the case for the Turris, really it comes down to, for me, to the bang for your buck. Like, yes, you are getting better specs on the 700, but you're still getting good specs on the Turris. You know, you still have a Shimano drivetrain. The Zoom brakes are, I mean, they performed well in our testing. Still have a 100 millimeter front fork, good tires. And so there are a lot of good things with the Turris. In the end, our category winner for this is the 700 series. And we decided that because it is just better specs across the board, and that is reflected in that increased price. But overall, both have really good bang for your buck. But the 700 series does take this category. All right, now on to the next category, which is which bike has the best motor. I'm gonna make the argument for the 700 series. It has that Bafang 750 watt, 60 Newton meters of torque motor. And when you look at just the test results, it's faster at each assist level. It climbed the hill faster. And I will just say, like, jumping on the 700 series, it's just a ton of fun. Like, you jump on it and it just kind of goes. So if I'm commuting, it's got the speed that I need. But it's not too fast. Like, some e-bikes you jump on, it's like, oh, this is not comfortable, not manageable. And I would say the 700 is just that perfect balance between good speed, good power, but yet still very manageable.
Yeah, definitely. And then in making the case for the Turris, I think it's kind of just, if we step outside of the scope of this comparison, the Ride1up 700 is a little bit quicker compared to a lot of similar e-bikes, whereas the Turris is kind of like right in line with that average of what we expect from a 750 watt motor. And the good news is that e-bike average is still a lot of fun and still a lot of good practical speed. The Shangy 750 watt, 60 Newton meter motor of the Turris, it's a little bit more manageable. Kind of saw in that speed test a really nice curve of the speed overall. It's a little bit slower on the acceleration side, but still pretty good. And if you hit the throttle, there's a lot of power on tap there as well. So if you do need to get going faster, you definitely can on the Turris also. But for this category, we did ultimately end up siding with the 700 as the better motor here. Now the Feng motor, it's just a little bit of a more well-known brand, a little bit more commonly used, and like you said, it does a lot of fun. So for our next category, we have hill climbing ability, and in the case of the Turris on this one, it does have a built-in advantage that I like a lot. If you are gonna be like riding off-road at all, or you're riding in some dirt, those knobby tires that it comes with is gonna give you an advantage there. It's gonna make hill climbing just a little bit easier. The motor is very capable still in terms of just climbing power. We saw that on the hill test. I mean, the throttle results between the two bikes were neck and neck. But I think just the ability to kind of like take it on some dirt and have a little bit better performance makes a compelling case for the Turris for me.
And I think that's a fair argument. I will say on the 700 series, if that is someplace that you're riding often, yeah, throw some knobbies on the 700. You're not going to be limited to the stock tires by any means. In general, when we look at the results, the 700 did climb faster in pedal assist. Going back to the difference in the motors, it is just a little more powerful. And because of that, we are going to award the category winner here to the 700 series. Again, on throttle, they were both about the same, but when you kick in and you start pedaling, you do just get more power out of the 700 series motor than you do the Turris. And so even though both of them did well, our overall category winner is the 700 series. All right, now we're on to range. Which one has the best range? And this one is actually the most complicated one for us to talk about, because if you look at the results, the 700 series went farther than the Turris in max assist, whereas the Turris went farther overall when we put it in min assist. So this one's a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, it really made it hard. For me, I would probably go with the 700 because max power, it's fun, it's fast, sometimes I'm late to work. And it can go farther in max assist and it goes faster in max assist too. So for me, I mean, that is really nice to kind of know that is there. So I'd probably lean a little bit more on that end of things. But like you said, it's hard because we run them both through two different tests, a max and a min, and the Turris actually had the better min result.
Yeah, and I will point out that you are also in a scenario where it's easy for you to take your bike into the office and charge it. Yeah. Which is where I would probably, if we're awarding a winner, probably say the Turris, because it did just go farther. So it has better range. And I'll also point out that it did so with a smaller battery. So it's still impressive on both of them. I think at the end of the day, we're gonna have to call this a tie, and it's a push, right?
Well, we'll let you guys decide that one for yourselves, because for us, we were perfectly split on that one. At the end of the day, it's up to you. All right, now let's talk ride quality, which is kind of a mix of, you know, handling, the feel of it, and all those other kind of hard to describe and quantify things. But I'll take the case for the Turris here. Again, this is a $1,300 e-bike, and I think it has a lot of things going for it in terms of its overall quality. Right off the bat, I think it's just a really good looking e-bike. You know, it's got a really good solid paint color to it, and those tires are awesome. And it's the type of thing that you just enjoy riding around. It's got a lot of good comfort for that price. I mean, 100mm fork, pretty comfortable saddle. The tires are really nice because it's kind of like built for some light duty off-roading, like right out of the box. Overall, I think it really is just a pretty awesome bike that people are gonna like. Yeah,
and I mean, it really is. Like, it is a fun bike to ride, to handle, that lightweight, just all those factors. I would agree with you. When we're looking at the ride quality of the 700 series, the biggest difference that I would say is kind of a combination of all the things we've talked about. You know, you do just get a slight step up in specs from the drivetrain to the brakes. Even that front fork, you get a little thicker stanchion, and so just overall, and I apologize, I don't have a better word for this, but the 700 series just feels a little bit more solid. And so category winner wise, we are going to give this to the 700 series. We found it just to be slightly more comfortable on the roads, slightly more solid kind of feeling, you know, and when you're handling with from the motor to the brakes, it's just a really good bike. And that's not taking away anything from the Turris, because that thing, I think, just packs above its price tag. It punches above its price tag is what I would say. And it's just still a ton of fun. But overall category winner, we are gonna go with the 700 series on this. All right, our final category is value for the money. Now, this one, I just wanna kind of put a caveat beforehand. both of these bikes, I mean, every bike made by Ride1up kind of fits right at the top of that category. You always get good bang for your buck with Ride1up. That's kind of their mantra almost. I would say the argument for the 700 series, yes, it is $300 to $400 more. But when I compare the 700 series against other bikes in the category in the same kind of, spec range, it's usually a couple $100 cheaper. So you do get a lot of bang for your buck with the 700 series when you're comparing it against similarly priced bikes.
Yeah, and then when we kind of look at the Turris, I mean, you've got good performance, you've still got some good spec, not on the same level as the 700, of course, but good spec. But I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to the Turris, it's a little bit easier to recommend e-bikes in general that are $1,500 just because there's a lot of really good ones there. And like you said, the 700 is a value leader, but it becomes a lot harder to recommend bikes in that $1,000 to $1,300 price range because you're usually making some compromises or things of that nature. So the Turris is just one of those bikes that we can easily recommend even at that price point. And that it's just a good all-around package that you can do a lot of different things with that e-bike. And so it makes a really good case, which is why I think when it comes down to value for the money, I think we have to give that one to the Turris. So now we're at the big question here at the end. Which one should you buy? And honestly, it's gonna largely come down to price, I think, is what we determined after putting these two bikes head to head. If you have a few extra $100, the 700 is just a fantastic and fun e-bike. It does have slightly better specs across the board, a little bit better performance, I think, and just it is a ready-made commuter right out of the box. So if you're gonna be doing a lot of riding around town, it's going to serve you so well as soon as you get that bike and get it together, and you're gonna put a lot of miles on it just because of how much fun it is, especially riding around on that fun, fast motor.
Yeah, it is a really fun bike, bottom line, right? But if you're someone that is more on a budget, and when you look at it and say, oh, $1,300 is about the max that I can go, we have zero problem recommending the Turris. Like, that is one of the few bikes in that price range that we feel wholeheartedly capable of saying, no, 2 thumbs up, go buy that thing, you're gonna have a ton of fun. It has really good specs, it did perform really well in our testing, comes out of the box with those knobby tires so you can take it on a country road if you want as well. So overall, it's just a really good bike, and it is less than the 700 series. So it really does, again, for us, come back down to what's your budget level. If you have a little bit of extra budget, we would wholeheartedly recommend the 700 series. But if you're on more of a budget, go with the Turris. You're gonna have a ton of fun either way.
So that's gonna do it for us on this comparison of the 700 series and the Turris, but we wanna know what questions you have that we didn't cover here, so please let us know down in the comments below. And again, I'm Griffin Hales along with Justin Taylor, and we'll see you on our next comparison.